Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Everyone should have had minutes from the prior meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion regarding the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Correspondence for this evening. We have one disciplinary action. The Department of Health advising that as the result of an investigation, the New York Hospital Medical Center of Queens has been assessed a civil penalty of $5,000 for violations of Part 800.21B, D, G, F, and Q, Section 2, and Part 800.23, A, D, E, and 23F. In addition, the medical center was assessed a civil penalty of $2,500 for failure to comply with the previous stipulation and order. We have other correspondence to address this evening. On the membership side, we have a letter from our current Remsco member, Steve Retzloff, requesting consideration to be placed in a at-large Remsco seat representing commercial ambulance services. The current bylaws allow the chairman to bring forth a recommendation. I reviewed that request and recommend that we accept and appoint Steve Retzloff to an at-large Remsco seat representing the commercial ambulance services. Any discussion on that matter? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Steve. Thank you for your continued service. We also have a letter from Steve Kroll requesting consideration for reappointment to a term in the Remsco beginning in 2013. I also recommend Steve's reappointment. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The only discussion I was going to make was that he's being extremely valuable at so many different levels.
Where is he? Oh, okay. Thank you. Oh, geez, he's not here.
Saying nice things, and he can't even.
Yeah, we'll have to read that back. We have a resignation from council member John McMillan, effective immediately, resigning his seat on the Remsco. John was in a Schenectady seat. We have a guest, I guess, for now, Jim Doward, who is going to be replacing Evan to be in the Rensselaer County seat. We're just waiting some formal documentation, but we certainly welcome you to the committee, and we look forward to your participation, so thank you. We also have a letter from the Department of Health to Berlin Volunteer Fire Company from October 3rd advising that the fire company has not addressed a statement of deficiencies related to a recent DOH review of the fire company, and they have until October 17th. They had until October 17th to submit the required information. I have no update on that issue. I'll also note that we have a communication from the town of Corinth withdrawing the request for a CON review. With that, Jim, any comments on that, on the CON committee? Where are you, Jim?
Nope, that's withdrawn, and there's nothing pending at the moment.
Great, thank you. From the executive committee report, all the items that we discussed will be covered in a different section of the agenda, with the exception of one item. We had a discussion and a motion that made and seconded, that comes here as a seconded motion, to allocate $25,000 in restricted funds for the purpose of pre-hospital research that would be awarded on a grant basis, requiring matching funds from an outside party of some sort, a corporation, an individual, or otherwise. Steve, I think you had written down the formal recommendation from that. Do you recall it? Can you read that back to me, please?
Establish a $25,000 research fund that be used as matching funds for initiation of research programs by members of the pre-hospital care community in the region.
Thank you. Discussion on that particular item.
It's a wonderful
Mike?
idea.
Thank you.
You're up. Sorry, we were talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry, we were taking care of something.
I know.
We've opened the floor for discussion regarding the seconded motion from the executive committee regarding a $25,000 restricted fund for pre-hospital research, of which one criteria was an outside matching contributor, and we thought you might have some comments.
My suggestion would be that we actually look at each application that would be made. And I say we, and that Dr. Jagoda has already been nice enough to volunteer to be on the committee that would be.
He just didn't know enough to say no.
True. But looking at each application under its own merit, and suggesting that we accept applications that are not for matching fund programs, but give preference for matching fund programs. The reality of my suggestion is that there may be some places that are able fiscally to do a matching fund on a small research project. But when I think of creating a small research fund that can drive EMS research, really at a relatively grassroots level, I think about small volunteer agencies or even small municipal agencies that may not have any fiscal ability to support matching funds even on a $2,500 grant. And therefore, I would hate to see a really good idea not be able to be funded by this. But I do think the preference should be given, because I think that that type of ownership of an idea that's borne by that fiscal involvement will definitely be something that would be valuable and should be used in creating preference for who a grant awardee would be.
Any other discussion?
I think that's a reasonable, friendly amendment to the motion as presented.
It would certainly make us stand out on top, more being proactive.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, so we have a seconded motion from the executive board, which we need to vote on. If you disagree with the motion as stated and would prefer to entertain a motion amended, something in the manner in which Dr. Daly has discussed, you should vote against the motion that was brought down. If you are comfortable with the motion as stated, you should vote for it. Okay.
You can amend that now. If the amendment fails, you're back to the original. That's the normal way of doing it. Quicker.
Move to accept the friendly amendment.
Did you restate them?
Is that a proper form, David? Or?
It doesn't have to be friendly, just an amendment.
Okay, we
Well,
can do that.
Lord,
That's fine. That's a good suggestion. A little quicker, I appreciate the efficiency. Can you rephrase the amendment just so I'm sure we have it correctly?
Shall I be friendly?
No, it's in the spirit of Halloween. I'd prefer that you be
Unfriendly.
Spooky. Thank you.
My amendment would be that we remove the requirement that it be matching funds, and that we place that instead into a section below where preference would be given to grant applications that have matching funds component.
Ooh, cool.
To read it back exactly as it would read then, establish a $25,000 research fund that would be used as funds for initiation of research programs by members of the pre-hospital care community in the region. And further down in the description, it would be read, preference shall be given to applications that bring matching research support received from other sources. And those would be the two modifications to the paper that has been distributed.
And
One more unfriendly amendment. Could we please specify that the money earmarked for this project will come from Remo's general fund and not from the New York State Grant Fund? Put that on the record.
And would also be amending the amendment to the amendment?
No, you can
Right.
adopt that by unanimous consent.
I would actually make that part of my amendment.
Okay, and,
It has to be adopted by unanimous consent once it's made and seconded, though. Just ask, is it okay with everyone, and then it goes in.
right, one more question though on it first. There was some discussion of limiting the annual amount that could be awarded to grantees during the calendar or fiscal year.
The proposal reads, the amount expended from the fund shall be limited to $5,000 per year.
Is everyone comfortable with that amendment?
My only comment was, suppose somebody had, a Google Corporation came through with $10,000 for a program.
That would be separate. That wouldn't be through this application process. That would be.
No, suppose they came through as a matching grant.
But we're capping it. We're capping it
You know
at
what I'm
5
saying?
years.
Then we're restricted to $5,000, and that would be my only concern.
My suggestion would be, since this is small seed funding for relatively small projects, that if something like that were to present itself, I wouldn't take it through this process. I would bring it to this group independently.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so could you just read the amended motion one more time so that everyone is clear before I call for a vote, please?
Establish a $25,000 research fund that would be used as funds for initiation of research programs by a member of the pre-hospital care community in the region.
Everyone's comfortable with that amendment? Of which I propose the addition of limiting the annual expenditure to no more than $5,000 in a calendar year.
The total amounts expended from the fund shall be limited to $5,000 per calendar year.
Everyone comfortable with the amendment to the amended motion?
I just have one
Make a
question.
motion, sounds good.
Yes, Jeff,
What
Rick.
is pre-hospital care community? What do we, that's kind of like this kind of nebulous thing, so I know somebody in a group, so I'm part of the community, or are we going to specify it? Did you purposely leave it vague, or what was kind of the intent? Is it going to be for ambulance companies and the members in, or is it going to be for outside organizations to come in and ask? I just kind of was curious what was intended with that.
That's a great question. I believe we defined that. Steve, do you have that
Well,
definition?
the pre-hospital care community was used to incorporate the field of people involved in pre-hospital care. So we're talking about agencies, individuals, agencies, obviously EMS agencies, obviously hospitals involved in pre-hospital care, people that are EMTs, paramedics, physicians. So a proposal may come from an ambulance service, a proposal may come from a physician on the REMAC.
Could come from the nurses committee.
Could come from the nurses committee. So we intentionally did not limit it to EMS agencies or certified EMS individuals because the community of people who provide EMS services are broader than that. But we would be, should someone apply that would, shall we say, be an esoteric applicant, we are under no obligation to fund that application. I mean, this is subject to the work of a committee.
It's subject to the work of a committee, and as any other expenditure would be subject to final approval by the full body, by the full Remsco. So that's your final gatekeeper, is everyone in this room.
There you go.
My expectation, frankly, when we first started talking about this, is that I would not expect that we have an application every year. But I would expect every once in a while, we will get a really interesting application that'll provide some really interesting conversation here and hopefully contribute to what we're providing for EMS. We've got some really, really smart, thoughtful providers in this region, and I'd really love to see this serve as an opportunity for them to expand.
That I think is great. My only fear, and the reason I asked, was because I could see us spending $5,000 if somebody knows that there isn't somebody else applying for it. and they're right on the periphery of it. Well, why don't I put in for this grant, and I just would hate it to be used for that. It's great if you want to fund the EMTs and the paramedics and the nurses committee and things like that. That's wonderful. That's where it goes. I just would be afraid that it was such a loose definition that most anybody could get their fingers on that money, because right now, we're flush. There have been years where we could barely scrape together enough money to pay rent and to pay salaries. So I just should always, I realize that when you live through that, you remember it, but the reality is funding may not always be here, so I just, a little forethought is something.
Well, I think it's important, and I don't think it needs to be said in there that it doesn't have to be given out every year, and if there aren't applications that are appropriate, we've got a pretty smart committee that's gonna be here, including one at-large member, as well, who can frankly never bring an application forward if there isn't anything that's any good.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Anyone abstain? Motion carries. Thank you. Everything else that was discussed at the executive committee will come up in another report. Going to take things a little bit out of order, and I'd like to cover the GPO Finance Committee subcommittee report from Mr. Kroll.
July and August were excellent months for the GPO, amounting to sales of approximately $10,000. September was not a great month, amounting to sales of less than $1,000. So equal them out, on average, it's a pretty good average over the 3 months, but hopefully October will be better. And I encourage everybody to continue taking a look at Mohawk, especially for high volume items where their prices are just incredibly low, such as software and things that are used in hospitals that we buy, that they buy them by the tractor trailer load. So for things like software or non-rebreathers, you're not going to find better pricing. I think so, and that reflects some of the increased sales.
Thanks, Steve. We'll be pleased to know that while you were out of the room, we re-elected you for another term.
Thank you.
Congratulations. All right, let's go to Tim.
Hopefully everybody has a copy of my report. Just a few things. Recapping the awards banquet, I think it was a tremendous success, very well attended, and yes, the food was great. Rich Ruther has settled into that office, and he's currently developing late fall, midwinter, early winter training schedule. That's about it, other than the website update. Our developer tells me about 2 weeks for it to be up and fully running. And that basically concludes my report. If anybody has any questions.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Finance report, Rich?
Sure. I'll be very quick. We're in good shape. Nearly $500,000 in liquid in investments, cash and cash equivalent. Another $76,000 in receivables, all money due to the state that will be here eventually. Liabilities are less than $1,000, and we have one bill for approval, which is books to teach more courses, $658 to Channing Beth, I'm not sure how to pronounce, which comes to you as a seconded motion for approval, or
Discussion regarding the second motion for payment of the bills. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Rich, you want to cover the Semsco while you're on the floor?
Sure, absolutely. I sent out my report by email, just some of the highlights for the record. If anybody has questions, I think everybody got the PDF that Tim sent out. The financial news on the horizon is not any brighter for next year, much to no one's surprise. We're hopefully looking at $20 million again for the entire state EMS budget. The Bureau is predicting they may fall short somewhere between $2 and $5 million on educational training dollars. I mention that because if they do, that has been their priority, and the money is going to have to be cost shifted from somewhere else. So I think we need to kind of be vigilant, I guess is probably the best word. Mr. Johnson did give us some clarification on the new educational standards. There was some information confusion out there to begin with. All EMS providers should be updated prior to June 30th, 2014. They do not necessarily have to recertify by that date, and that's a huge difference in terms of cost to agencies and hardship on providers. The department said they will not be changing certification dates or policing this themselves, so it will be up to agencies to decide whether or not they wish to allow individuals to practice who have not been updated to the new standards after June 30th. So they're tossing the onus back to us, which is fine. Very interesting. If this is approved by DLA, and that's where it sits now, they are looking to adopt a REMAC patient care restriction guidance document, which would require, if adopted, would require agencies to report sanctions that they take against providers for clinical reasons to their local REMAC. And then the program agencies would have to disseminate that information on to other agencies in the region. The goal of this is to prevent people from hopping from agency to agency when they have outstanding quality improvement issues. Just a couple of reminders from Mr. Jones and Systems that Remsco receives a CON application and will notify the Bureau of it immediately, and narrow banding is a reality as of the end of the year. The docs I'll leave to Dr. Daly, but they were short a position of having a quorum, so no business action was conducted. The only really nice news I have to report is Mr. Kroll is now going to be, beginning January 1st, the second vice chair, and will, 2 years thereafter, ascend to the chair of the State Council. And they couldn't have picked a better gentleman for it. Very proud of you, sir. That's my
Here,
report.
here.
Thanks, Rich. Congratulations, Steve.
That bridge to all my homework.
You know, you're a ghost fighter, too.
Let's take the medical director, MAC, and academic committee reports all together. Doctor?
We'll start with the state report. As Rich said, we didn't actually do any business, which meant that business actually still got done, but it wasn't on, didn't get voted in and can't officially take place. Among the things that can't take place is the city of New York can't go forward with new rescue protocols that actually were pretty fascinating and expand the use of ketamine, among other things. The Suffolk County protocols that were brought forth expand the idea of whether or not fentanyl can be given on standing orders to children. It's probably best that we didn't vote on it because the state hasn't addressed whether or not that's going to be allowed yet. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But the Suffolk protocols had some changes suggested to them, and will hopefully, when we see them in January, will be able to be addressed by both the Bureau and Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement, so we can answer that question clinically. The other one that was, there were two other very interesting things that happened. The first was the next set of protocols to our west, which actually will come from Central New York,
Mid-state and North Country.
Mid-state and North Country, right? Were extremely troubling, and I chatted with both the medical directors about this as well as with other members of the Medical Standards Committee. And the reason I bring it to you to let you know is it's one of the reasons that we now have collaborative protocols along the eastern side of New York State. The folks there used our design, and frankly, the protocols, if you hold them far enough away from your eyes that you can't read them, or close enough that I can't read them, look very nice. Unfortunately, if you actually read the words, there is a significant amount of difference, particularly in the administration of controlled substances, between their standard, which would be between their three regions, and the standard that we have here, where we actually have a significant amount more faith in our pre-hospital care providers and their ability to control pain, to adequately treat things like seizures and sedate. I'm extremely concerned about those protocols, and we asked them to take their protocols back and review at least their design. So there wouldn't be providers that would go from Amsterdam to Utica to work a shift and lose their job because they were suddenly practicing outside the scope of what they would normally be doing in Amsterdam. So hopefully that will be taken into good counsel by our friends in Central New York. Frankly, we also offer them our protocols. North Country had some physicians who were extremely interested in using our protocols, and we've had more requests from providers up there. But we'll wait and see what happens. Westchester, by the way, and Hudson Valley are firmly moving forward with our protocol. So it will be the collaborative Eastern New York State protocols, I guess now. The other thing that happened, which will create a significant amount of higgledy-piggledy around the state, is that we started discussing the concept that advanced life support providers, such as critical care techs and paramedics, cannot provide care at that level unless they have controlled substances. For the people in this room, this shouldn't come as a surprise since we've been doing it in this region, mandated by the REMAC here since 2004, I think. The rest of the state still doesn't recognize this, and frankly, it's creating a little bit of consternation on Long Island. The physicians see this as something that's going to be a pretty good idea. I would look to see that change will be made statewide in January. They asked me what sort of a time frame I thought something like that should take place on. I said, tomorrow, and they said that that wasn't reasonable, so we decided a year would be reasonable. Couple of other things. First, the intranasal naloxone program continues to go well. There was one little hiccup with the arrest of somebody who had been reversed by the Suffolk County Police Department. Turns out there is a law called the Good Samaritan 911 Act, which is now being created into a patrol directive in the Suffolk County Police Department. We're learning an awful lot as we go forward with this program, where we've got BLS providers giving naloxone and law enforcement providers giving naloxone to reverse illegal drug overdoses. Law enforcement's got some things to learn here too, so we're all going to learn them together. But the program continues to go forward very successfully, and Suffolk County Police has been extremely proactive and very helpful in terms of creating solutions for this within the program. I've been asked to give a report on what will probably close this pilot in May. So the pilot, rather than going the full 2 years that we had first anticipated it, since at this point we've been going for about 6 months or so, we have close to 40 people that have been reversed so far under the program with no harm to EMS personnel and good utilization of the protocols. And it will be a success. Those are the most salient things that I've got at this point. Anybody has any questions for me? Great. The most important thing from the academic perspective will ultimately be this 13 hours of update material, which, depending on how you hear it, is either truly 13 hours of time or just making sure that the material is covered, and it may be interpreted however it wishes to be interpreted by the medical director that's signing off on the CME certificate from the people that I have talked to. So, at the end of the day, anybody who wants to know how the Venturi mask works, I'll sign off on 2 hours of time for you for oxygen administration. So I think that's the most important thing we've got there. So, said tongue in cheek, but review the rules before you sit down and get 13 hours of education, please.
Particularly in light that the protocols haven't changed yet. We're only into the educational part.
Don't worry, we won't be adding the Venturi mask back in. It just happens to be one of the things that we've adopted in the national standards. And the idea of creating something that's within the national standards will have this little hiccup and get everybody there. Our regional providers are going to do just fine in a very brief, concise, and non-extended update. I think we're going to do fine.
Mike?
Mayor.
Well, one question that we're fielding at our office, and we keep referring them back to their respective REMACs, is with the change in the intermediate to the AE&T standards. Any time frame since you're controlling the east coast of New York? I mean, no pun intended, but people are asking, when are you anticipating revamping or looking at the protocols in light of that?
I think actually a 2-year cycle is something that will continue.
That's fine, I mean.
Yes, and Mary, I've gotten that question as well, so it's fair to bring it up in this environment. The reality is that there are not that many pure intermediate agencies that will be affected by the change to AEMT. There are significant changes, though, that I think we need to look at and make some decisions as to how that's gonna move forward.
What we're anticipating seeing is the shift from critical care either up or down. We're anticipating there may be a large flux downwards to this level.
For financial reasons, mostly.
Whatever reasons may be, I'm not, I mean,
That's interesting, because the one thing that the state has been very clear on is that they weren't, while they've adopted the national standards, they were very much not going to address the fact that critical care tech does not exist in the national standard.
but we're not eliminating that level, but we're
Right.
waiting to see how this level plays out. But if an agency can pay $700 for a critical care, or whatever the fee is for the new class
Thereabouts,
versus,
yeah. It was quite the discussion this week at Vital Signs. It was a major topic in 4 separate classes with Mr. Johnson. Inquiring minds want to know.
but that was the most common question, when are the protocols changing? Please speak to your remarks.
There are some REMACs that are trying to figure out how to address this. Some will be relatively simple. Monroe Livingston, for example, has a limited critical care text from their protocols altogether. You are either an EMT in Monroe or you are a paramedic. If you are something in between, that's great, but you're going to practice as an EMT unless you become a paramedic. I don't anticipate us making that change here, but I am the chair of a committee of some very smart people. We'll see what sort of decisions that ultimately get made. And I would not anticipate anything of that earth-shattering nature happening without coming here. We discussed it here before we elected to no longer have critical care classes in this region. And frankly, I think that that is an excellent decision that this region has made to its strength. And we should continue down that pathway, particularly now that the state has adopted the national standard. However, we will anticipate that we will continue to be part of a collaborative group with these protocols. And if region, particularly the region to our north, uses critical care techs quite well within their region, in part because of the physical structure and the distances within the Mountain Lakes region. But Mountain Lakes is using our protocols well. I think our protocols are well designed at each level to make sure that they can be used safely, and we're continuing to watch them really carefully. So, long answer, short question, 2014, Mary.
Thanks, Mayor. Other questions or comments for Dr. Daly? Anne Marie, Nurses Committee?
We need everyone, so we're meeting November 15th.
Okay, thank you. MCI Committee?
This weekend, we're testing our regional mutual aid plan, and Jim is actually running it, so I think he has a few words to say.
Just so everyone is aware and spread the word, this is going to occur on Saturday morning this week, the 27th. The calls will start going out around 9:20 a.m. And one of the goals of this plan is we do things in our normal operating mode, so we just call the people we normally call until we can't handle it, and then we put in, when they say activate this remote EMS mutual aid plan. At that point, all the PSAPs in the various counties know what to do, and we're going to see if they know what to do. And part of the plan is we're going to artificially test this so that every agency in every county will be called, and maybe called for several ambulances in their fleet. And we're just going to let this thing run until we get the word back we're out, so we don't have anything else to send. So this gives us a test in real time of our actual response capacity. Colony EMS is actually hosting the drill. It's put on by Homeland Security. It's going to be an off-site airline crash on Metro Park off of Wolf Road in Colony, which is the parking lot where the Guitar Center is, I think, that area. Colony already has the units that are actually going to be on the scene lined up and arranged to be there, along with the fire, police, Red Cross, airlines. Everybody's involved in this thing. So when the call goes out Saturday morning, and you might get dispatched as you normally would, we just want to see if you can staff that ambulance, but tell the folks do not respond. It's just, do you have a crew or you don't have a crew? And at that point, your involvement's done. Any questions, call.
Questions for Jim or PJ?
when they receive that call with the PSAP, will the feedback be going back through the PSAP to the?
Yes, everything will be funneled back through, you'll get a call from your dispatcher, stand by for a call, and you acknowledge the call, I have approved, so then at that point, they'll tell you you're done. And I'll be in Albany Communications, and PJ will be in Columbia, and Jim will be in Rensselaer County. If we had somebody from Schenectady, Saratoga, and Greene to sit in their dispatch center, just make notes of how the thing transpires, so we can critique it after we're done.
Good. Thanks.
Excuse me.
I think we covered membership earlier. Nominating committee. Any updates from QI committee? Okay.
Question on membership?
Yeah.
Did Phyllis resign last month?
I was not here last month.
I think she had other commitments or was gonna do something else, but,
Phyllis Declacker?
yeah,
I believe she's an alternate, and she was replaced by this gentleman right here, Aiden O'Connor.
okay, but do we need to appoint
We need a new chair.
a chair or something, or is Phyllis gonna handle it next? Wonderful person, so it's just whatever you want, but we need somebody to look at how many
Yeah.
openings we actually have on the Remsco, and did we go over the number we were supposed to have tonight? And somebody to keep us from doing silly things, so if we could have a chair on that, it might be a good idea.
How about you, Jeff?
I did not bring this up, so I.
I was gonna say, that was
don't know
silly
what
on
they
his
do.
part.
But-
I make a
think the-
motion.
I think the
that
hardest
Jeff
part of
Williams-
being the chair is, thank you. The hardest part of being the chair is probably to keep us from doing silly things.
It is, it absolutely is, you're right, okay.
If anyone is interested in serving as the chairperson for the membership committee, send me an email and we will act upon it through my capability to appoint you at the next meeting. Thanks, Jeff, for picking up on that. I appreciate it. Albany County report. Jim, back to you.
Nothing to report.
Columbia County.
No report.
Greene County.
Ditto.
Rensselaer County.
No, just welcome, or thank you for the welcome. I'm just scratching the surface in Remsco County, working on a few things, and gonna be looking out to get some resources for people.
Great. Saratoga.
No report.
Schenectady.
No report.
Before we adjourn the regularly scheduled meeting to move into our education session with Terry, which we could then excuse Teresa, and we could exclude you as well. But otherwise, is there any new business to come before the council?
November, December meetings.
Thank you, Tim. We had a brief discussion regarding the November and December meetings. Thanksgiving is early this year. I believe it's the 22nd. And we have a scheduled council meeting for Monday evening, the 26th. The December meeting would fall very close to Christmas. So we brought forth a seconded motion, which I forgot to cover at the top of the agenda, to meet in November on the 26th and to cancel the December meeting. Any objections or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Any other new business? Anything else we forgot? Motion to adjourn? Second? Al, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you, Teresa. We don't need to exclude you, but we will exclude you. With that, Terry is going to bring us through part 2 of our CON education.
The Bride of CON, your daughter 6. For those of you that weren't here in June, we started this presentation to kind of give a quick update on how to do, how we're going to go through the CON process in the future. The handout that you have, if you don't have them, or someone will be coming down this way, is designed basically to do two things. The first 3 pages are a resource for when we go, when we have to deal with another CON, or when the Remsco and the CON committee have to deal with another CON application. To deciphers the statute to some extent. I think it's a quicker reference than 0606, which is the policy statement we rely upon. The second portion of the materials, which is started at the top of page 4, is a discussion or kind of an expose of the recent Utica, Kunkel, Remsco, Appellate Division 3rd Department extravaganza. And I had to reword this or redo this a little bit since Governor Cuomo signed legislation early this month on October 3rd with respect to Utica and Glens Falls. But what I hope to do in the 12 minutes, right? 12 minutes, okay, that we're going to take to go through these slides is to highlight some of the finer points of the Utica decision. There's a whole political component to this thing that probably some of you are very acquainted with that I don't even want to go near. But from a pristine legal viewpoint, there are some things that were put forth in the appellate division decision, which is where this case is going to die right now, because there's no expectation, even though it could have gone up to New York's highest court, there's really no expectation it's going to go there now. There's no benefit really with the law having been passed earlier this month. But the appellate division was very critical of the Remsco and the Semsco in some respects, probably wrongly critical. But what they have done is redefined, or maybe better defined, what has to be done at the Remsco level when we're dealing with CONs and in particular muni CONs. So we are going to skip ahead to page 4, which is slide 9. Again, the first page is actually going to go to slide 10. We're making better progress than I thought. Page 4. If you can't read, I can't read them either, okay? This is the way they turn out too small. I know if they have a reason, you know. And again, the muni CON, for those of you that aren't as old as dirt and been dealing with these things, historically there was no distinction, but then in 1992 there was either depending upon who you talk to, the Troy Amendment, the Albany Amendment, or the Schenectady Amendment, to create a presumption in favor of the municipalities applying for CONs. Supposedly that didn't accomplish what was intended to do, and again, it was the statute was meant to say there's a presumption in favor of a muni CON app. So in 1997, the 2-year trial muni CON was created, and the legislature added the language strong presumption in favor of a permanent CON. I cannot tell you what a strong presumption is, except that it's more than just a presumption. And I can tell you what a presumption is. We'll get there in a little bit. So, again, the evolution of the muni CON and this whole presumption, strong presumption thing dates back to the late 20th century. It's the same process. It's still the same process, so don't be misled by my heading up there before Utica v. Daines. Muni CON, well, you know, it's a different process. Muni CON made through the Remsco. Before the expiration of 2 years, the application for permanent CON is made, and that's where things should start to parallel our typical CON app. However, the application carries a strong presumption in favor of approval. And then the last part of this, a presumption is a legal inference that supports a fact and shifts the burden of production or persuasion to the opposing party. You know, we get hung up on things that we really shouldn't have to get hung up on, but courtesy of the legislature, need. I mean, we come into these meetings and what the hell's need? What is public need? Because the definition is so evasive. The legislature used the word presumption and strong presumption. This is out of Black's Law Dictionary, which is not necessarily authoritative, but what a presumption is it just, again, shifts the burden. So it creates a situation that if there's other evidence, that there's other evidence that would refute it, it could push that presumption back. But it gives the moving party a leg up, if you will. This is the shortened version of Utica v. Daines. This case had already gone up to the appellate division once. There was an ALJ's determination, but for what we need to be concerned with, this is the Reader's Digest version of what happened. Again, knowing that it's not the complete story. City of Utica made an application for a permanent CON to the Remsco. It was denied. They appealed to the Semsco. It was denied. They appealed to Judge McGrath in Albany State Supreme Court. It was denied. It gets to the Appellate Division Third Department, and the city wins a 3-2 decision. A couple things are significant. A 3-2 decision on a 5-panel bench is pretty significant. The other thing that, as a court watcher, it took from November till May or so. It took a real long time to get this decision out of the Appellate Division, which leads me to believe that there were some things going on in the back room in terms of a lot of divisiveness and indecision or posturing by the judges. So the upshot of it is the Appellate Division Third Department is one of 4 interim level courts in New York. If you get a 3-2 decision, that can automatically be appealed to New York's highest court, the Court of Appeals. There's very few. The court tries diligently to not have 3-2 decisions because the judges above them don't like to work a lot. Okay, so a 3-2 is an automatic, goes to the Court of Appeals. And when you read the decision, there's actually a bit of acrimony in the tenor of the words. Again, you have to kind of read it closely to see that, but it was not a typical decision from a lawyer's standpoint, certainly. But and that's where this case, it's not over. It could still get entertained by the Court of Appeals, but there's really no reason for it to go any higher because of the legislation that was passed. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, 5 minutes? Okay. Neither the Remsco, the Appellate Division in the majority, which is Judge Malone, Judge McCarthy, and a decision written by Judge Egan, I'm sorry, Spain Malone, not McCarthy. Spain, Malone, and Egan. And Judge Egan is the one who takes credit for writing the decision. The dissent was by the dissent was Spain and Stein. It was McCarthy, Malone, and Egan. And McCarthy, Malone, and Egan are all Albany County people. Spain is Rensselaer County, and Stein is Rensselaer County. But they were the majority, the 3 votes, were very critical of what went on, or what they perceived went on in the Remsco or the Semsco, and were very critical that the record that they had before them, which is our Terry Kloss record, and the papers that were submitted, including things like hearing officers' reports and things like that, did not give proper deference to the strong presumption in favor of the city of Utica. The record reflected that the inquiry at the Remsco focused on whether the city could do a better job than Kunkel and whether the city services were needed in the first place, and the court was very critical of that, so that's not part of the inquiry. And they went on to say that the strong presumption that's built into the statute 3008 is not a guarantee of approval. Well, we talked about the shifting burden. It's I parenthetically put in there really. Based upon the majority's decision, it's going to be very difficult to overcome this strong presumption. And I don't know, Steve, if your lawyers have talked to you about it yet. I mean, it's the majority opinion here is very. I mean, it's very pro municipality, and it's hard to ferret out whether you're ever going to be able to beat that back. But in any event, the case went up to the Semsco, and this is where the decision actually gets. If it wasn't so sad, it would be funny. They're very critical of the Semsco, saying that the Semsco was confused about how the presumption was to be applied. That the Semsco impermissibly questioned the need for the city to start the service, and improperly focused on Kunkel's ability to handle all the calls. Well, the record that the Semsco created showed anything but confusion about how the presumption was to be applied. There was a lot of discussion on that, and the decision, the Appellate Division Third Department decision, says, and it's obviously critical of the Semsco. But it says that the Semsco Systems Committee paid lip service to the statutory presumption. There was no dialogue regarding the presumption when the Semsco's full membership met to vote on the petitioner's application. That's what the 3 judges who voted together said. Judge Stein says, significantly, again, this is the dissenting opinion, the record reflects that the Semsco fully discussed and considered the presumption. Okay? So some of you were there and you know what was discussed. Judges reading records say, some of you said it there was only lip service paid, and the others say it was fully discussed. So I'm gonna go with the people I know in this room, because you're the ones that can hurt me the most immediately. I'm believing that there was a lot of discussion about it, but for some reason, it didn't captivate or capture the attention of the three judge majority. But that's a very critical statement. But what that tells us to do is we at the Remsco have to do belt and suspenders. We have to articulate not only our decisions but the legal standard. Rich saved my bacon several months ago. The substantial evidence, standard. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we're going to have to do and make it idiot-proof. I mean, literally, you got to make it. You got to not only use the words, you got to draw a picture so that when somebody looks at it down the road, they can say, "Oh, I guess they did discuss it." And then, even if you do make a record, this decision tells you there's no guarantee that they're going to believe you. Okay, a one judge swing of the Remsco did everything fine. Okay, but that's not the way this decision is written or the way it came out.
Before you get into the amendments, to make sure it's clear in layman's language, so if we have a municipal CON that comes before us, the only discussion that we are authorized to have is about whether or not, we are not authorized to have a discussion about whether that service is needed or not. Is that a correct statement?
No, it's not a correct statement, and this is why you have to read the tea leaves, okay? You still have to...
Does the 12 minutes stop now that he asked a question?
Yeah, he did, okay. You still have to follow the 06 guidelines. What you have to do is you have to make the determination of need, but apparently you can't say your service isn't needed, okay? I mean, it's a dance. It's what they did, those of us who are familiar with Kunkel, was Kunkel serving the needs of the community in Utica? I think probably so, adequately so. So was there a need? No, but yes, there was. Okay.
So let me continue asking weird questions to get straight answers, but that's not the way it is. So, do we have any option other than to approve a municipal CON as the presumption of the existing?
That's a great question.
Strong presumption.
That's a great question. I have an opinion, but I don't want to give it to you.
Okay.
Can I ask you?
Fair enough.
No, but I'm saying that really, it's a strong, rebuttable strong presumption. I'm not seeing a whole lot of way that you don't.
I mean, and you're here obviously to educate us tonight, but from a practical standpoint, this will boil down to someday there's a municipal CON in front of us. And no matter what we say, it sounds to me, if we were to vote no, we would be putting ourselves into a series of events.
If you do vote no, you better go all out on the record and explain the reasons why you vote no in painstaking detail.
Are these judges supposed to be intelligent?
Well then, sorry.
So, in other words, just to take what he's saying, if we literally documented saying we are reviewing, this is what we presume that there is a need, however, even with this presumption and discuss the presumption, then we can discuss, and we're open to look at other things, but we have to give them that presumption from the get-go and have to state it in the record.
And I would say that's strong presumption. I wouldn't leave it at presumption. I would say we've considered the strong presumption set forth in the statute. And that presumption has been rebutted by the proof, okay? And the reason being, the reason this is a shocker for me as a lawyer is that state agency decisions, or these types of decisions, don't usually get overturned. There's great deference given. The courts love to boot things to, the agencies and stick with them. That's why you get so many stupid EEOC decisions out there. But the courts rubber stamp them, that's what they do. Sorry, Rich, I'll let you know when the next one's coming. No, not as a, but if the agency decided it, they have the expertise and and they understand the stuff, which is usually not true. Same thing with a lot of DEC stuff that comes down. It's preposterous, but the courts give great deference to it. They have to give great deference. The only way they can overturn an agency determination is if it's arbitrary, capricious, which is basically completely screwed up, or not based on substantial evidence. This is one that, I've read this case 100 times. It looks to me like there was a pretty substantial record before the court, yet they come back and say, we're gonna overturn it. So, move on here. The proposed, and again, when I wrote this slide, there was a proposed amendment. It is now amendment. It was created just for Utica and Glens Falls. On October 3rd, the governor signed it. The appeal of Utica v. Danes to the New York Court of Appeals was on hold at the time. Again, I suppose they could pursue it if they wanted to spend a lot of money for nothing. Even if the Court of Appeals comes down and says the other way, you've already got a subsequent legislative change. So now, unfortunately, it's doubtful that there's going to be any scrutiny given to this appellate division decision, which means this thing sticks until the next decision, which will probably be when all the faces around this table are different. So this is the law of the land, if you will, with respect to what we have to do, which is if you're going to turn down a muni CON, you've got to bring in the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West. That's a good start, and articulate in the record all of the reasons why that strong presumption is being rebutted. I threw this in, and this violates every rule of teaching. I understand that because there's too much crap on the slide. But this is what, oops, there's an extra zero in there too. Sorry about that. That's what 3008 used to look like, okay? And it talks about, the strong presumption, blah, blah, blah. Now, 3008 has all this crap attached to it, okay? So when you go to read it, you go, why is this in there? Well, it's because it's only for Utica and Glens Falls. Those are the two cities down here. Any city with two, and the important language for us is Glens Falls and Utica shall not be required to apply to the Regional Medical Services Council or the Remsco. Okay, so that's the Utica Glens Falls exception. I point that out to you because now whenever we go to 3008 or 30,008, as I've crafted it there, you're going to have to deal with this extra paragraph of crap that you're going to read. And what's this for? Oh, I remember that was Utica and Glens Falls. The legislature, mucked up our statute with this crap. But the most important thing is, if it happened to Utica and Glens Falls, they're kind of like Poland and Czechoslovakia. It's setting a trend. There's actually a provision like that in the law relating to volunteer firemen, and every volunteer fire department that needed an exception for membership has it. So it goes on for 2 pages in the statute books, all of the fire companies. I mean, literally, this 3008 could get amended for every city or every fire district that wants to take avail of it and has a sympathetic legislator. Okay, lessons learned. First one's be careful, because this case ended up in a place where I didn't think it was ever going to end up, and now it's probably going to die right at that 3-2 decision. We have to follow the statutory procedure to the letter, base the determinations on recited facts in the record, and this is my Rich Brandt. Articulate the legal standard by which the decisions are being made. Substantial evidence, strong presumption. Can't just say, we voted in favor of, and this is the reason why. And then even so, that may not save us if we get into an Article 78. Going forward, just a couple of my observations. The former belief that the courts will show great deference to administrative determinations as long as they're not irrational and unreasonable has been shaken, at least with respect to EMS. Okay? They basically said, you guys didn't do your job right, and we're stepping in and changing your minds. The future of municipal CON applications seems to be skewed in favor of approval based on both the court precedent, okay, that 3-2 decision, and also now we've got this legislative momentum. I don't know that it's ever going to go beyond Glens Falls and Utica, but if I'm a judge in a close case, I'm sitting there, well, wait a minute, the Appellate Division 3rd Department said this, and here's what the legislature's doing. It certainly seems like 2 of the branches of government are leaning in a way that certainly strongly favors, overwhelmingly favors the muni con apps. And then the Remsco's role in future municipal con applications is unchanged at present, but it's unstable. If you're Utica and Glens Falls, you never have to talk to the Remsco or Semsco. If you are another medium-sized city and you don't want to con it, maybe you, instead of wasting the time with the Remsco, you go talk to your assemblyman and your senator, and you get added to that list. That's the Reader's Digest version of what happened. And again, if you want to, the prior slides are for to store away in a file for the con committee, and next time an app comes in and you read 0606, you can read that, the first 8